Okay, let's unpack this. We've all heard those, super competitive stories, maybe about jobs or startups, but let's stick with that real estate analogy for a minute.
Right?
Imagine you're trying to buy a house in a crazy seller's market.
Hmm.
You're bidding over asking, you're waiving inspections, showing all your funds, and you just keep losing.
Mm.
You have to stop and ask,
Mm.
what is that one unstated thing I'm missing? What does it actually take to compete and win?
And that intense feeling, that sense you're doing everything right but still coming up short.
Yeah.
That's the day-to-day reality of nonprofit grant writing. Funders are, well, they're basically investors.
Looking for the perfect match.
Exactly. They have money set aside for impact, but they get hundreds, sometimes thousands of applications for every single dollar they award.
So securing that financial support for a great cause, it's not just about having a good mission. It's about being the most prepared, the most articulate, the most strategically aligned applicant in the pile.
That's it, 100%. And our mission for this deep dive is to break down both the art of it, the storytelling, and the science, the compliance, the structure of successful grant writing.
Where are we pulling from today?
We're drawing on a bunch of sources, some fundamental guides, FAQs, and a lot of expert resources, really, with the goal of giving you a shortcut, a way to move past the basics and into writing truly competitive, expert-level proposals.
I like it. So let's start with the relationship itself. When we say grant, we're not just talking about a donation or charity, right?
No, not at all. It's a strategic partnership.
Yep.
And there's shared risk. A grant is fundamentally built on trust.
Okay.
The funder, whether it's a private foundation, a big corporation, or a government agency, they have the capital, they have the philanthropic goal, they want to do good work.
But they can't do it themselves.
Precisely. They don't have the infrastructure or the direct client access or the staff to do the actual work on the ground.
So they're actively searching for an organization to sort of delegate that mission to.
That's a perfect way to put it. They set up a formal process to invest their resources where you, the nonprofit, are already doing the heavy lifting. The stakes are really high because if you fail to deliver, the funder fails to achieve their mission.
And their reputation takes a hit.
Right, which is why capability and alignment are they're foundational.
Okay, capability is key. But what about the writing process? This is what I think overwhelms people.
Well, grant writing is just the structured process of applying for that funding. It's a pitch, but it's all on paper. And we have to be clear, the formality, it varies wildly.
I can imagine.
It can be anything from a short 2-page project description with a simple budget, all the way up to a massive multi-volume application that needs to be printed, bound, and sent by a specific courier on a specific day.
The crucial step then, which I feel like gets missed, is knowing the audience first.
Before you write a single word, you absolutely have to check the funder's specific guidelines. That means their timing, their exact submission rules, and, this is the most important part, their funding priorities.
What are they focused on this year?
Exactly. Is it clean water? Is it early childhood education? Is it capital projects? If your mission isn't aligned with their current philanthropic goal, you're just wasting everyone's time, especially your own.
Which brings us to the question that haunts every single busy nonprofit director. Is grant writing actually difficult?
It is absolutely time-consuming, and it's often complex organizationally. But is it inherently difficult? I'd say no.
Really?
Most funders are just asking for information you already have, data on clients, project plans, your budgets. The work isn't creating brand new information out of thin air. It's compiling it and framing it in a way that connects your mission directly to their goals.
So the biggest hurdle isn't the writing itself, but just the discipline of getting everything together.
That's it. And that's why the old advice to give yourself a generous timeline is so much more than a cliche. You need that time to coordinate internally.
You mean getting things from different departments?
Yeah. Yes. You need the finance team for clean, current financial statements. You need your program people to spell out the measurable outcomes, that internal coordination. That's almost always the longest part of the whole process.
Let's get into the science of the ask then. We know we need the basics, the who, what, where, when. But what are the specific, maybe more technical documents that take a proposal from just a generic request to something truly competitive?
To win today, you have to go beyond just the narrative. You need technical clarity. We're talking about things like a clear logic model.
A logic model.
Yeah, it's a chart, basically. It graphically shows the relationship between your resources, your activities, your outputs, and critically, your intended outcomes. Funders love them. They also want to see that you can define SMART goals.
Specific, measurable, achievable.
Relevant and time-bound. Exactly. If you can't measure your impact, they can't report the results back to their own board, and the whole partnership just falls apart.
So the data is really the foundation that holds the story up.
It is. The required documents will always include a realistic, itemized budget. They need to see how every single dollar gets spent. And they demand financial transparency, so background documents, financial statements, and for bigger grants, your last year or two of independent financial audits, it confirms you're capable.
A point that I think confuses people is who actually does the writing. If I'm an executive director and I'm totally swamped, can I just hand this off?
Oh, absolutely. Anyone can write the grant. It could be a staff member, a dedicated volunteer, or a contracted professional writer. The person at the keyboard isn't the deciding factor.
There's a catch, right?
There is. What's crucial is that while anyone can draft it, the final submission almost always needs a signature from the top. The CEO, the board chair. This shows it's a serious commitment from the entire organization.
So it's the difference between the writer and the person who is ultimately responsible. It underlines the accountability.
The application has to show, words, heart, and belief, sure, but it also has to be backed by that institutional commitment.
Okay, so if the writer isn't the key, the message has to be. How do we make sure those words actually connect and give us that competitive edge?
Well, the starting point is just flawless clarity and professionalism. Excellent writing matters because these reviewers are reading so fast, they're looking for any reason to filter an application out.
So no jargon.
Please, no internal jargon, no acronyms, no slang that someone outside your office won't get immediately. You have to assume you're telling a brand new story from scratch, but a story that's backed up by hard, validated data.
And the sources really stress this one critical step. Before you hit submit, you test the application on two very different groups of people. Why is that so important?
This is how you find your blind spots. First, you give it to someone who knows your program inside and out. That's for accuracy. Are the details right? Are the numbers correct?
Okay, that makes sense.
But second, and this is where the magic happens, you give it to someone who knows absolutely nothing about your organization or your program.
So they're playing the role of the funder.
They are your stand-in for the funder. They're the ones who will find all your internal assumptions. They'll say, wait, what does level 3 client triage actually mean? Or you say the need is huge, but this data is from 3 years ago.
They find all the holes.
All the holes, the unanswered questions, the unproven claims, the missing link between the problem you've identified and the solution you're proposing. That feedback is absolute gold.
Okay, let's get really actionable. We've got 3 key steps to get that competitive edge. Step 1, learn from history.
Yes. There is so much value in dissecting what's worked before. Go back and look at the grants your nonprofit has actually won. What were the compelling stories you told? What data really showed the scope of the need? What promised impact got them to invest? Don't reinvent the wheel. Just analyze the formula that worked and then refine it.
Step 2, learn from the front lines. This feels like a challenge for a grant writer who might be, stuck in an office all day.
It's a challenge, but it's a non-negotiable one. The writer is representing the voices of the people delivering the service. You have to get out of the office. You have to visit the front lines.
To see it for yourself.
To feel it. You need to capture that passion, that transformation through real stories and current data. If you can't translate that urgent need into words that a funder can feel, the proposal is it's going to fall flat.
But I can hear a small nonprofit director saying, how do I find time for that? I'm already drowning.
And that's a powerful, valid question. It really speaks to the organizational commitment needed.
Yeah.
You have to make the time because that story, that qualitative data, that's often the single thing that makes you stand out. Without it, you're just another applicant with generic data.
It makes the writing feel less like an assignment and more like advocacy.
Okay, step 3, learn from the experts. The analogy here is great. Shark Tank.
It's the perfect analogy for the whole competitive process. You are standing on a stage right next to dozens of other worthy causes. On Shark Tank, what gets you sent home?
Not knowing your numbers. Not knowing your numbers. Having a shaky valuation. Failing to explain what makes you different. In grant writing, that translates to a weak budget, goals that aren't smart, or a mission statement so generic it doesn't explain why your solution is the best one to invest in.
So you got to know your stuff, practice the pitch, and tighten up anything that would make Mr. Wonderful raise an eyebrow.
Absolutely. You have to let the readers know, without a doubt, that they're choosing the right cause and the best possible solution. And a quick tip for anyone out there who feels writing valuable. Don't let the pressure stop you.
Oh, this is a good one.
Use a text-to-speech app on your phone. Just talk it out, get all your thoughts out first, and then worry about editing and polishing it up later.
Okay, before we get to some next-level resources, let's circle back to something you mentioned earlier. Organizational readiness. What does being grant ready actually mean?
Right, an organization has to figure out if it's structurally and financially ready to even receive the money. It's more than just having a great idea.
It's about the back end?
It's about having your governance in order, clean financial processes, and, crucially, having those independent financial audits done if you're asking for a large amount. A funder who's about to give you six figures needs to know you can manage that money properly.
That self-assessment feels foundational. And once you know you're ready, you need to know what you're asking for. The sources outline 6 main types of grants.
And understanding these distinctions is vital for that strategic alignment we keep talking about. This is where a lot of nonprofits go wrong.
Let's start with the 2 most common ones: program grants and operating grants.
A program or project grant is restricted money. It's for a specific, time-bound activity like a summer reading program or building a new playground.
Okay, very defined.
Very. An operating grant, on the other hand, is usually unrestricted. It supports the general business of the organization, salaries, rent, light bill. Funders often prefer program grants because the impact is so easy to measure, but honestly, operating grants are what most nonprofits desperately need to keep the doors open.
I can see the tension there. What's next?
Then you have capacity building grants. These are designed to make the organization itself stronger. Think new donor software, board training, strategic planning. They're an investment in your future growth.
And what about, buildings and equipment?
That's where capital grants come in. They fund big, tangible assets. A new building, a major renovation, a new vehicle. These are usually really competitive and require a ton of financial paperwork.
And the last 2.
The last 2 are a bit more specialized. Endowment grants, where the money is invested to generate future income. And in-kind grants, which aren't cash at all. They're donations of services, equipment, or goods.
Knowing those 6 types really forces you to look in the mirror and ask, what kind of help are we truly ready for right now?
And that leads perfectly to the final piece of preparation, developing your foundational materials. We mentioned case statements earlier, and what's interesting is that a lot of formal training starts right here with building a powerful case statement.
Define that for us.
A case statement isn't the grant application itself. It's the bedrock document that explains your entire reason for being. It details the community's need, the scope of your mission, why you exist. It's the big why that you pull all your future grant stories from.
So all the hard work is done before you even see an application.
A lot of it is, yes. The best training gives you the tools, the PowerPoints, the worksheets, the step-by-step guides to build that case statement and then translate it into a winning grant proposal.
This whole deep dive really shows that winning a grant is, well, it's less about luck and way more about strategy. It's competitive, no doubt, but it's also inspiring as long as you have the discipline, the time, and the right ask for the right project.
I think the image to leave with is this. Successful grant writing is about finding an investor, a partner who is just as excited and inspired about your results as you are. You're not asking for a handout. You're inviting them to invest in real, measurable impact. You're locking arms with them to serve your community.
That invitation has to be compelling. We've covered the art, the science, the strategy. But as a final thought for you to take with you, if you already know your mission and you know the incredible work you do, what is the single most compelling high-stakes story from your front lines that you need to tell today, complete with smart metrics, to make a complete stranger want to invest in your cause?